You know that gut punch moment when you step outside your home and instantly feel something's off? That was me, frozen in my own driveway, staring at a tow truck hitched up to my brand new Ford F-150. And the kicker? It wasn't the city doing the towing. It was Karen's son. Before the madness unfolded, let me set the scene. My driveway is wide, legal, and sits entirely on my property. No HOA regulation, no city ordinance, no shared easement, just my land. And yet, here stood a 20-something guy, Karen's pride and joy, acting like he ran the place. He was reversing his beat-up tow truck like he had every right to be there. I bolted forward, waving my arms. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" He didn't even bother to look at me properly. "HOA says trucks can't stay in driveways overnight," he said flatly. "I'm doing everyone a favor. My blood was boiling. First of all, this wasn't just any truck. It was my workhorse, my weekend pride and joy. Freshly detailed, its red paint was gleaming in the sunlight. Second, this guy had zero authority. He wasn't with the city. He wasn't a licensed towing company. He was just freelancing under the flimsy excuse of helping the neighborhood. And there she was, Karen, standing on her porch like some smug queen, arms crossed, blonde bob perfectly in place, pastel cardigan wrapped around her shoulders. Her lips curled into that self-satisfied little smirk she was infamous for. She didn't even try to hide her glee. "Someone's cleaning up this neighborhood," she called out proudly. I was stunned. I wasn't blocking a sidewalk. I wasn't breaking any laws. The HOA had pulled this stunt before, whining that my truck lowered property values. But legally, they couldn't touch me. I had letters, permits, and city documents to back it up. Yet here was Karen's son, chains rattling, ready to drag my truck away like the law didn't matter. A mix of rage and disbelief twisted in my gut. This wasn't some petty neighborhood spat anymore. This was theft. I stormed up to the tow truck, planting myself between him and my vehicle. "Unhook it, now, or I call the cops," he smirked. "Go ahead." "HOA's got my back," Karen shouted from her porch again. "Maybe next time you'll learn to follow the rules." That was it. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 without a second thought. Karen's son laughed, thinking I was bluffing, until I met his eyes. My voice was ice. "Dispatch," I said loud enough for both of them to hear. "A man is trespassing on my property, attempting to steal my vehicle with a tow truck." His smirk faltered. His hands lingered on the lever like he could play it off. And right on cue, Karen jumped in like she was starring in a courtroom drama. "He's not stealing. He's enforcing HOA rules. That truck is an eyesore. It doesn't belong here." I actually laughed. "Karen, this isn't HOA property. This is my private driveway. Your son has no badge, no license, and no legal order. He's committing a crime." She rolled her eyes dramatically, yelling louder so the neighbors could hear. "He's protecting the community." And of course, a few blinds lifted up around the neighborhood. People love a good bit of drama. Karen loved it even more. She waved her arms, spinning her usual story about how I was the troublemaker and how my truck ruined the street view. But anyone with half a brain could see this wasn't about the HOA anymore. This was personal. Then I heard it, the distant wail of a siren. And that's when Karen's son made his biggest mistake. Instead of unhooking the chains and walking away, he doubled down. He climbed back into his tow truck, revved the engine, and tried to inch forward like he could haul my Ford away before the cops arrived. The chains tightened with a harsh metallic groan. My heart pounded. I rushed up and slammed my hand against his window. "Cut it out before you make this worse," he sneered. "Too late." The police cruiser rolled up just as the tow truck strained against the weight of my F-150. Two officers stepped out, hands resting casually on their belts, but their expressions made it clear they weren't impressed. They took in the scene in a single glance. Me blocking the tow truck, Karen shrieking from her porch, and her son gripping the wheel. "Sir," one officer said firmly, "turn off the engine and step out of the vehicle." Karen came hurrying down her porch stairs. "Officers, finally. Please arrest him." She pointed at me like I was the criminal. "He's harassing my son while we're trying to clean up the neighborhood." One officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, your son is trying to tow a vehicle from a private driveway without authorization. That's not cleaning up anything." "That's illegal." Her smug grin faltered for the first time, and right then I knew I was watching the beginning of her unraveling. The officers moved fast. One positioned himself near me to make sure I was safe, while the other approached Karen's son, who still sat stubbornly in the driver's seat of the tow truck like a cornered animal. "Turn it off. Now." The officer's voice was calm, but carried enough authority to cut through the tension. Karen's son hesitated, his knuckles whitening around the steering wheel. For a split second, I thought he might actually try to lurch forward, but then his eyes flicked to the officer's hand resting casually near his holster. With a frustrated grunt, he finally killed the engine. "Step out," the officer ordered. By now, the entire neighborhood was wide awake. Curtains twitched. Porch lights flicked on. Phones were raised like it was some kind of live broadcast. Everyone wanted front-row seats to the drama that Karen had started. Karen, of course, rushed forward, trying to seize control of the narrative before it slipped too far from her. "Officer, you don't understand," she said, plastering on that fake sweet smile she always used when she wanted something. "This truck has been an ongoing violation. Our HOA has rules." The officer cut her off sharply. "Ma'am, HOA rules do not override state property laws. Your son has no legal authority to tow vehicles, especially not from private property." The color drained from Karen's face, but she recovered quickly, forcing out another weak excuse. "But he's just doing what's best for everyone. We've had complaints, and I didn't let her finish." I held up my folder, the one I always kept ready for this exact HOA nonsense. Inside were neatly printed copies of city permits, zoning laws, and a county letter confirming my driveway use was fully compliant. I handed the folder to the officer. "Every time they've tried to claim I can't park here, I've proven them wrong," I said. "This isn't about rules. This is harassment." The officer scanned the papers, nodded, then turned back to Karen with finality in his tone. "He's right. Everything checks out. Your son had no grounds to touch his vehicle." Karen's son muttered under his breath. "This is ridiculous." The officer's voice hardened like steel. "What's ridiculous is attempted theft and trespassing. Do you realize the charges you're looking at?" Karen's eyes widened. "Charges? He's just a kid trying to help his mother." "Surely you don't mean—" "Ma'am," the officer interrupted, his voice cold and clear. "Your son could be arrested right now, operating an unlicensed tow truck, attempting to remove a vehicle without consent, and damaging property are serious offenses." The neighbors were whispering now, their phones capturing every second of the spectacle. Karen had spent years being the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, loudest voice, biggest ego. But under the sharp glare of law enforcement, that power was crumbling fast. For once, she didn't have a clever retort, just silence. The only sound was her son kicking at the gravel in frustration, and in that moment I realized something had shifted. The tables had turned. The HOA couldn't save them this time. The law was finally on my side. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Karen's son stared down at the ground, scowling, while the officers quietly conferred on their next move. Karen, desperate, made one last attempt to spin the story. "Officers, please," she pleaded, her voice soft now, trembling with faux innocence. "We're just trying to keep our neighborhood respectable. This man's truck, it attracts the wrong kind of people. We've had strangers drive through here because of it. You understand, don't you?" The officer didn't even blink. "What I understand," he said flatly, "is that your son nearly committed grand theft auto in broad daylight. That's not about respectability. That's about crime." Karen's face flushed red. Her mask slipped completely, revealing raw frustration beneath. "You can't charge him!" "He was only doing what our community wants." The officer turned toward the small but growing crowd of neighbors gathered on their lawns, cell phones aimed like spotlights. "Anyone here file a complaint about this truck?" Silence. Not a single hand was raised. A couple of neighbors even shook their heads. One muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "We like his truck better than your son's tow junker." A ripple of quiet laughter spread through the group. Karen's smirk, her favorite weapon, vanished entirely. She was cornered, and everyone knew it. The officer looked back at her son. "Here's the deal. You can either cooperate and leave peacefully, or we will take you down to the station right now. Your choice." For the first time, Karen's son looked genuinely rattled. His tough guy act cracked as he glanced nervously at his mother. She whispered something frantically, but he shook his head. Finally, with a heavy, defeated sigh, he raised his hands slightly. "Fine, I'll leave. The officers weren't done." One pulled out a notepad and began writing. "You'll both be receiving citations. Trespassing, unlawful attempted towing, and disturbing the peace. Consider this your warning." "Next time it's cuffs," Karen gasped. "Citations? You can't be serious." But they were, and the grin that spread across my face right then was absolutely priceless. For years, Karen had lorded her imagined power over everyone, using the HOA like her personal army. But now, standing humiliated in front of the entire neighborhood, she had no defense left. As the tow truck sputtered away, unhooked and defeated, I gave my Ford's hood a satisfied pat. My truck was safe, my rights were intact, and Karen's reign of intimidation had finally cracked. The officers gave me a nod. "Good job standing your ground. If they try this again, call us immediately." "Don't worry," I said with a grin. "I will." For once, Karen and her son were the ones forced to face reality. The HOA couldn't protect them anymore. If you enjoyed this showdown, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more neighborhood drama. You won't believe what happened next.